Hi, Kathy Canuel, the vegan prepper. I'm so excited to be bringing you my very first prepping vlog under that name because I just changed my YouTube channel. I'm really excited to share that with you and sort of to talk about all things prepping from a vegan perspective. And even as a zero waste person, you think, how on earth do those things overlap? But I think that they overlap actually very easily, and I can't wait to kind of share that. And definitely, we're zero waste wannabes. So nobody yell at us for the things that we're not perfect at yet, because we are moving forward. It's a process, just like prepping in general is a process. And so is vegan, or so is being zero waste. It's all a process. So we are excited to share that journey with you as a vegan family. And especially for me too, as a woman, to share some of my prepping perspective as a woman, things that, young single guys who live all by themselves, who have all this money to spend on the latest wilderness survival tool or whatever to throw in their bug out bag, or like their fifth bug out. Like they have a get home bag, they have a bug out bag, they have this, they have that, and they have friggin', $150 multi-tools in every single one of them. And it's like, yeah, because you're single, you don't have to spend money on anyone but yourself. So what is it like when you are on a budget, when you're a woman, you have a family, you have, it's a different perspective. And so I can't wait to share that with you. Also in an urban environment. We are in the Phoenix Valley. We live in the desert, so some of our concerns are a bit different from concerns that other people would have. And yeah, so we're talking about all that stuff, but especially if there is something that you would like for me to cover in prepping, please tell me down below in the comments. And I cannot wait to get you that information, especially as I'm learning and planning. I'll let you in on my thought process, and then hopefully it can help you kind of get an idea, because I might think of something that you haven't thought of. Just like I get so many ideas from people just watching their videos and thinking, you know what, I don't need to do that, but oh my gosh, that I never thought of that, And so when you're in that researching phase, it can be really good to listen to what other people are doing. So I can't wait to do this. I'm excited. I'm excited to have a direction for this channel that is all of the things that I'm currently really passionate about. And yes, so I want to give you some actual substance though in this vlog. So number one, I think, would be, how did we get started with prepping? And the thing is, we've always been kind of an outdoorsy minded family. I've got a garden that I work in all of the time, growing a lot of our own food. I've been wanting to become not necessarily completely self-sufficient, but pretty self-sufficient in the food that we're pulling out of our garden. And so much, and even zero waste, so much of it really we came to because of budget, not so much always because of the environmental or like the noble concerns. It was just like, how can I stop spending so much money? And I can't, I can't even tell you, like, getting into the zero waste movement, it was like, oh, not using paper towels, check. I stopped doing that forever ago because I was tired of buying paper towels, things like that. So there's so many things that we started because we were just looking to spend less money, or I was looking to spend less money as the mom, like kind of in charge of the finances. Because I'm a stay-at-home mom, my husband works, but I also run a business and I have my garden, and I'm a busy lady. But anyway, so it's just kind of funny to me. It's like, we look so noble. It's like, no, we're just trying not to spend money, honestly. So I get to share a lot of that kind of from this perspective as well. And then also, because when we do spend money, why did we spend that money? Like if we do spend a lot of money on something, for instance, we just got ourselves a Berkey water filtration system, which is not cheap. Why on earth would you spend that much money on a water filter and things like that? So that is, when we do spend money, it's because like it's important, at least in our minds. And so for that, it's obviously because we live in the desert, water is our number one concern. And then especially if we ever get cut off from city water, we need to have a safe way of filtering what water we do have. We need to have a way of having water. So we are currently looking into a rain catching system, and then we can use the Berkey to filter the rainwater. And that was a huge part of what we just did, and why we made that decision. So we haven't gotten the rain system yet, but the Berkey is also because looking ahead. So I guess I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I guess it's important to see the mindset looking ahead in our country. So I am, it's August 31st at the timing of the filming of this video. and I live in the US, the Phoenix Valley. So I'm looking ahead to the fact that in about 2 months, we are having our presidential election. And even though, I'm not living in fear, because so much of preparedness, this is not about being afraid. This is just about being aware and being prepared. So you're aware so that you're prepared and not scared. And I'm just aware of this election. And I think that no matter which way it goes, we are potentially looking at some issues, potentially riots and unrest if it goes, one way or the other. And I'm not trying to get political. It's just something I think that no matter your political affiliation, you end up being vulnerable to any kinds of things like that. So my son has been going out to get our water at like the local water and ice to just buy, the big 5-gallon jugs of water. And that is something that I no longer want him doing. Quite frankly, I just do not want him going out and doing that anymore, especially coming up along those times. And we have had some riots in my area, and then not knowing when something might pop up. I just don't want him having to go out for water. So that was one of the reasons we bought the Berkey now, instead of after we already built our rain catching system. So it's just sort of like, that's kind of thinking of that mindset, again, sort of just being aware and then being prepared and not scared. And it is something that we have had set aside since April. We were trying to buy one back then. We've waited this long for the original place that we were trying to buy our Berkey, and found out then that the Berkey website itself had them in stock. And so we canceled our order with the other place and went with the Berkey so we could just get one now. And I do not regret that decision. I'm excited about it, and I'm excited about having an access to pure water. It's really important. So that's like a big step that we have taken recently. But yeah, so for us, the way that we actually got started was, my husband has a somewhat variable income, and his job is just such, his industry is just such that they don't make as much money during these super hot summer months that we have here, all the way up to 120 degrees. Huge chunk of our year is over 115. It's a serious amount of heat. And in his industry, they just don't make much money then. So also coupled with that, the fact that our AC bills, our electricity bills, goes from about $85 in winter, because we never ever run the heater in winter. They go all the way up to as much as $350 or more during summer. So it's a huge increase in our bills and a pretty sizable decrease in our paycheck. And so for years now, we have already started kind of prepping for summer. I like store my nuts away for winter, but instead of for winter, it's for summer, because that is when we have our hard time, it used to be a hard time. Now it's like, it's fine because we just prepare for it. And we're aware of the fact that that's going to happen. And then we just prepare for it. It's not a big deal. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. And so for me, when coronavirus hit, it was actually a huge relief to us. Not the fact that the coronavirus hit. I mean, the fact that we had been prepared. I remember very clearly having my moment. Just a moment, because I was reading, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get emotional. Reading about the people who were struggling, and then they didn't have money and they couldn't get food. So even if you had money, shelves in the stores were bare and you could not get food and things like that. But there were plenty of people who were in a terrible situation because they didn't have either money or food. And I just remember that moment of feeling so grateful that even with all the stupid, the shenanigans and the craziness going on, at least we were not concerned about food. We had one of our very basic needs met. And it was such a relief to me. And then also the fact that because we already had been preparing for the fact that summer ends up getting kind of lean for us financially, that when we have financial disappointment coming as a result of this virus, we were already prepared for that. And we didn't we might not have had as much money as even normally during, like we had even less, but we were still prepared, and it was so much better of a situation for us than it ever would have been had I not already been prepped. So I was just prepped for summer for us, not for some giant pandemic. but what a difference it made in our lives and in our stress levels and in our ability, even as where we were still able to help. So like we were still able to donate, like we donated a 25-pound bag of rice when that was like a unicorn at the store. You couldn't find anything. And we were able to donate that because we had that on hand, because we were already prepared and we had enough. So we were able to give. And I think that that's another thing too, where preppers, I think, get considered to, they're considered to be possibly selfish, or like they're hoarders. And certainly some of them are. I'm not saying that not that all of them are, selfless individuals, or even that we're like such angels or anything like that. But I think honestly, it's one of the most unselfish things that you could possibly do to get yourself set and prepared, so that if some crisis hits, you're not one of the ones who's off panic buying, right? You are not one of the ones who's off creating the food shortage that's making it difficult for families to get food to feed their kids. You're already set, so you don't have to be part of the problem, right? And you can even potentially be part of the solution. So I think that prepping is a great thing, not just for your own self and your own family, it's great for other people too. To make ourselves not part of the people who are in need, to be part of the people who are set, so that we can then help the people who aren't in need. And I just think that that is one of the best things that all of us could do. I think of, imagine if some disaster happened and literally every single person had at least 2 weeks of food, or at least 2 weeks of water already set, so that by the time emergency vehicles got to them, they were still fine by the time aid came. And you didn't have people like dying in the street of starvation, or dying from sickness because all they had was unclean water, things like that. So I think honestly, prepping is one of the best things that as a society we all could do more of. And I think it's also kind of funny because like prepping is like, everything now has to be a thing. It has to have a name. It has to have a buzzword. I don't know if you've noticed that. Like, has anybody else noticed that? Like, I'm not that old, but I remember back when not everything had to be a thing. And now every single thing is a thing. Like, I don't know. It's just funny to me. So it's called prepping now, but it used to just like be the way that people lived. You put food aside for winter, or you didn't have food, right? Like, it's just the way that people used to exist. They used to always live that way. It wasn't called prepping. It was just called like being smart, like just being normal. And I think that for me is my mindset for sure going into prepping. It's just like being smart. It's like doing what you should do anyway, and not have so much dependence on the system that we have it as it is now. So it's kind of like my 2 cents on a little bit of why we got into it, why I think it's so important, and why I want to share about it, and start making videos about that, among other things, but definitely like kind of with a prepping mindset. So I also would like to go ahead and share in my very first vlog, because the budget is such a concern to us and such a thing that's very important, like thinking about like moving forward, like what is something that's really important for us, and that is definitely the budget side of it. So what are some things that you can begin to do that are absolutely free, you don't have to spend any money on, that you could start your prepping journey? And I would say number one, Canadian Prepper had a great video where he discussed the prepping pyramid, and I'm going to find it. I'm going to link it below. It was an excellent video. And number one is your own physical fitness, your own body. And so definitely that is something that I am currently working on. I'm, pretty overweight, and I am definitely now working on healthful eating and exercise and prepping my body, making myself as fit as I possibly can. One actually extremely simple way that I do that is by spending time on the floor every day. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but there was a guy I saw on the Rich Roll podcast, and I'm trying to remember his name. I always think Tom Riddle, but that's Voldemort. That's not the guy. I will link to that podcast down below too. It's an excellent thing. And it was way back when he did that, I started realizing, oh my gosh, that is so important. And it's about maintaining so much of our mobility. So floor time, but then also specifically squats, and how important it is to be able to physically be on the floor and squat. So like I'm filming this video, and it's funny, this is like my 87th take. I've been here for like 2 hours on my floor, just sitting here, because I'm like worked myself up to that. You would be really surprised how much flexibility it requires in the joints of your legs, strength in your back, in your core, and things like that, just to be able to exist on the floor for any amount of time. And it's something that we in the Western society, I think we end up with so many joint problems and so many issues because we lose our mobility. We are conditioned to be sitting in chairs. And while that's great, to sit in a chair, it's also really important that we maintain mobility and flexibility. And even without having to stretch or specifically do yoga or specifically work out, it is a great exercise to begin just spending time on the floor. Maybe you sit on the floor when you watch your TV just for a little bit. If you find you can't even cross your legs, get to where you can sit with your legs crossed for a while. You would be surprised at how tight your thighs can be. Just get yourself mobile and then work your way up to squats. I can't do my own free squat right now. Again, I'm very overweight. It's not something that I am capable of doing right now, but I can do a supported squat. And so I'm working my way up to just a free squat, which is a great way. And so, yeah, I'll link it down below. That entire podcast was so amazing to me and really opened my eyes about mobility and how important. So that was back in the day, but that's like a really subtle, small way that I have been working on my own physical fitness, as well as some cardiovascular fitness, walking, and healthy habits like flossing, making sure your dental hygiene is up, like you have good teeth, and you make sure that you are as healthy as you can possibly be, so that if something should happen, I think of it like the point of deterioration, right? You're going to be deteriorating from a certain point. So why not make that as high as it possibly can be so that, you have farther to go before you start having some issues. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents on that. That is like very low level where you can start physically. That's kind of where I started and where I'm, continuing to move, mainly with like aerobic exercise. And then I'm starting to incorporate some strength training, but it isn't something that has to be crazy. It's not something that has to be, wild. Seriously, just try sitting on your floor for a while and see, and let me know in the comments below. Can you even sit on the floor? Can you even sit cross-legged? That would be funny. Get yourself worked up so you could do that. Like it was shocking to me when I sat, and I used to be able to sit very flexibly on the floor. Flexible, is that even a word? Anyway, and it was shocking to me to see that there was one side particularly that I could not flatten, and now I can flatten both my legs. So I've increased my flexibility, and it's great. It was just a very simple thing, so try it. I know it sounds crazy, just try it. And so that's a free thing that you can do. Start working on your own physical fitness. And then the next thing I think that is just great to do is research, which is probably what you're doing right now. If you are watching this video, you're researching. Go ahead and read. Find yourself some vlogs. Like I haven't even gotten through blogs. I haven't even gotten through all of the free stuff that I have found in articles on the internet to even get to a book where I could recommend a book to you, because I haven't had to buy a book yet. I'm not through all of the information that's free. So just start looking at stuff online, reading articles, just finding information out. And then the planning, based on what you research, and then based on what you recognize are your own needs in your own area. Start planning. Like what is it that you need? So if you've never started, you've never stocked up even one thing in your life, go ahead and start planning, so that when you start stocking up, you're stocking up with a plan, and it's not like some unplanned, unhinged, random, willy-nilly panic buy like we've been seeing. So this is a great time to sort of start getting in on that. And if I would be able, could I suggest maybe start with like dry rice and dry beans? Right there, you've got like a huge amount of wonderful, beautiful, nutritious calories, and you will definitely still be reliant upon electricity and stuff to cook that. But assuming that the grid is still up, we're just sort of looking at maybe some unrest coming with the election. It's August 31st, 2020 right now when I am filming this. Again, I live in the Phoenix Valley, and pretty soon we're having our presidential election. So there's, potential unrest coming. And that, again, is not about being afraid. It's about being aware and prepared, so you don't have to be scared. Okay. Anyway, and so, yeah, just start planning, sort of looking at it, and get yourself to where you think you could be set. Could you be set for 3 days? Could you have an initial goal of 3 days? Get yourself to where there's enough water 1 gallon per person per day for all of the people in your family for 3 days. Get yourself 3 days, right? Then maybe go to 2 weeks. So we are now at 2 weeks. We're working on getting everything 100% set for 2 weeks. And then by the time you have gotten through the planning phases of getting yourself ready for 3 days and then getting yourself ready for 2 weeks, you will have probably all of the tools and all of the knowledge that you need to now push it out to a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. And so I have to, kind of get on and talk again about being able to prep a pantry for that length of time. And I'm not 100% certain that it is practical or necessary for every person in every situation to have like a year's worth of food. I don't know. We're going to have to discuss. That's like another discussion kind of video. Like I'll get on and kind of talk about that. Because like if you have some situation where you need to be eating from your pantry for a whole year, are you even going to be in your home? Like, is it going to be safe to stay where you are for a whole year? Like, so yeah, it's kind of like where my mindset is on that. And so I'm still researching and learning myself, but still kind of getting yourself to 3 days and then 2 weeks is where I would recommend starting. That's where I started. And it's really easy once you get that down to then begin to say, okay, now for 3 months, I need this many more bags of this or this much more of this. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents on that. So in order to do the planning, I think start a little notebook, a binder of some kind. Like I just have a binder that I've had for many years. It's been many things over the course of its life. And currently it is kind of the, my launch pad for the house. It's got my cleaning schedules. It's got, certain other things in it that are important to us. Some articles that I have read that I think it's really important to keep that information on hand. Charts, conversions, and then now I have a section specifically to prepping. And in my prepping section so far, we have a list that I have been working on with my husband for bug out bags in case, we do have to like hoof it into the desert, which is not an ideal situation. You want to probably stay home as long as you possibly can. But if there was some situation where we needed to leave, we need to have, some preparations for that. So what does that look like? What does our bug out bag list look like? As a family of 5 with a 2-year-old, like what does that look like? Also some of the tools that we still need. So I mentioned earlier that I have just gotten a Berkey filtration system. At least I hope I did, because I hope that was in this take. Because like I said, I've done so many takes. I'm kind of not remembering what I've said yet so far this video, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. But we just got a Berkey system. And so we have other tools. So for instance, I want a multi-tool for my purse, for my everyday bag. I want a multi-tool, and those are kind of expensive. And so that is something that I feel is very important for me to have. My husband has one and carries one every single day, but I don't. So I have a knife, but I don't have like tools. So anyway, I think it's very important to have that. And so that's just like one example. There's some other things for our home base. So like we want the rain catching system in our backyard. I want a rain catching system. So things like that. What are we looking at in that, kind of bigger, more long-term planning idea? But then also kind of looking more close to home. So I think also Canadian Prepper has a great thing. Again, I'm linking this video down below, and it's in the same video, I believe, where he discusses the prepping pyramid. He talks about micro, meso, and macro planning. So the water catching system, like the rainwater catching system, is kind of an example of more of a macro planning, like a really big, long-term kind of big plan idea. I think the Berkey water filter is kind of more of an example of a meso planning, like a little bit closer, still kind of at home, a little bit bigger, not something you're going to throw in your bug out bag. Micro planning is like everyday carry, bug out bag. And if you're not familiar with these terms, those are great places to Google and sort of start. Everyday carry, EDC, or bug out bag, or get home bag. There's so many different kinds of bags that people put together. So it's kind of like a good way to like kind of look at your prep and see like what's most important. So for instance, for me, like I already mentioned rainwater catching, and I mentioned the Berkey system. Kind of a micro planning thing, I think, would be like a bunch of Mylar bags for the prepper pantry. But for instance, I have decided I don't have Mylar bags. I don't have any kind of super long-term storage thing like that, Because for one thing, like, and I do a lot of dehydrating, but I live in an extremely dry climate. I live in Phoenix. So I have had dehydrated food in jars that has lasted for forever just on my shelf because it's not humid here. This is not something that you could do in another climate. You'd have to be more focused on making sure that moisture didn't get into your food. But I have chosen to, because again, we're on a budget, I have chosen to spend my money on some other things, the actual content of my pantry, and not yet so much in the super long-term storage of those foods. So like as an example, and I'll get into this too, like if you already have some food stored up, I'm going to talk about like a couple of things right now. Do a calorie inventory. And I will be making an entire video on exactly how I do this and what my planning. So this is a great thing where I'm talking about where you start with 3 days and then move to 2 weeks, and it becomes much easier to continue, because it's basically like after you've gotten like 2 weeks down, it's like wash, rinse, repeat over the course of, you know, months and years. And then hopefully with some variety thrown in there, because people are going to get sick of eating the same thing every day. But, you know, honestly, in a survival situation, it is what it is, right? So this is an example of, for instance, why I'm not focusing yet on getting Mylar bags and doing super, super long-term storage, because this bag of gluten-free macaroni pasta, which I picked up at Costco, this was like $6. It's already going to be good until 2022, like almost the middle of 2022. So I'm going to get like a 1.5 year storage life on this bag if I do nothing else. This is set now for like a 1.5 years. So I'm not going to focus on trying to get this into a Mylar bag so it'll last for 20 years or whatever, even though that probably could be a smart thing to do eventually. But right now, my focus is on getting ourselves a stock of actual food that we can eat, because we can't eat the Mylar bags. We can eat this, right? So when I'm talking about a calorie, so that's why I'm not focusing on Mylar bags, at least yet. And I will, hopefully they'll be more available soon, and I'll be able to, that's another reason, because they're not really available right now. But for now, just buying stuff and then just leaving it. And then, you know, a few months before this, you know, say maybe March or something, we can pull this out and then start using it, and then replace it with something else. But I have, which, you know, the information is back here on the nutritional label, but, you know, it's easier to see right here for purposes of my calorie inventory. If I write it big on the front, not only the expiration date, but the amount of servings and then the amount of calories per serving, so that I can divide that out based on the caloric needs of my family and know how much food I need, how much food I have. So what was funny too is when I started doing that, and so like I have a can of beans here as an example too. So like that, oh yeah, one of the reasons I bought this specific pasta as well is because it only takes 5 minutes to cook. So if I were in a situation where I were cooking with some kind of fuel, you know, like using a little rocket stove or whatever, instead of my electric stove, this would not require as much fuel to cook as certain other things. So that's like another kind of thing to be thinking about with the prep and the food. So you have your food prep based on the idea of still maintaining your electric power, but you also have food prep based on the idea that you might not have your electric power or your gas or whatever anymore. And if you're having to fuel your own fire, foods that you don't need to cook for as long become very important, as well as foods that you don't have to cook at all. So it's like a can of black beans is, you don't have to cook that at all. And this is 3.5 servings of 110 calories. So that's kind of looking at the calorie, again, the calorie inventory. And especially as vegans, what are we looking at too? Making sure, you know, we've got all of our nutrients covered, and also making sure that we have enough calories, which is something that's hard to do as a whole foods vegan. You'd be surprised how much you have to eat to get to calories, especially if you're an oil-free whole foods vegan, which is a whole other concept, like a whole other conversation we'd have to talk about at some point. As I know a whole bunch of you probably just went, what? No oil. But probably in a survival situation, to give ourselves more calories, we might be eating oil. But for now, my high calorie thing is canned coconut milk. So anyway, that's just a lot of kind of what I have started with, and hopefully given you some good information. And I definitely have some more videos planned and forthcoming. And hopefully I'll be able to get to a place too where I'm not doing so many talking head videos. But anyway, Hopefully you found that helpful. If you have suggestions for videos or want to hear more about anything, just let me know down in the comments. And as always, I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. Thank you so much for watching. Vegan Prepper out. Bye.